It was the year 1864. The sky over America was dark with smoke. The ground shook with cannon fire. The air was filled with the cries of soldiers. This was the American Civil War. Brothers were fighting brothers. Fathers were burying sons. Mothers were praying and waiting. In the small city of Boston there lived a quiet woman. Her name was Lydia Bixby. She did not wear fancy clothes. She did not ask for fame. She was just a mother, but her pain was heavier than any crown. Mrs. Bixby had 5 sons, 5 strong, brave boys. All of them were soldiers in the Union Army. All of them went to fight in the war. Can you imagine that, giving not 1, not 2, but 5 children to a war? Every day she waited by the window. Every day she hoped for letters. Every letter could bring good news, or it could bring heartbreak. One by one the letters stopped coming. One son fell in battle, then another, and another, and then the last one. 5 sons all gone. No more footsteps in the hallway. No more laughter at the dinner table. Only silence, a deep, painful silence. The neighbors watched her with sad eyes. "She is strong," they whispered. "But how can a mother survive this?" She did not scream. She did not cry in the streets. But her heart was broken into pieces. The news of her loss reached the governor of Massachusetts. He was shocked. He could not believe it. He said, "This woman must be honored. Her sacrifice is greater than gold." So he sat down. He wrote a letter to the President of the United States, a man named Abraham Lincoln. He wrote, "Mr. President, one of your citizens has lost 5 sons in this war. She deserves your words. She deserves your comfort." The letter was sent to the White House, to the most important man in America. But that man was also a father. He had also known pain. He had also known loss. When Abraham Lincoln read the letter, he did not speak right away. He looked out the window at the cold gray sky. His hand touched his chest. He closed his eyes. He knew this war was tearing the country apart. He knew many families were suffering, but this story, this one mother, it touched him deeply. He said to himself, "She must not feel alone. I will write to her. I must write to her." That night he sat at his desk. The room was quiet. The candle flickered, and the president picked up his pen. He did not write with power. He wrote with pain. He did not write as a president. He wrote as a human being. He began, "Dear Madam, Part 2. The Man in the White House." The year was near its end. The war was still raging. Cities were burning. Families were mourning. And inside the White House, Abraham Lincoln sat alone. He looked tired. His face was thin. His eyes were full of sorrow. This was not the same man who had once stood tall with excitement. The war had changed him. Every morning he read reports of battles. Every evening he received news of deaths. And still he carried on. Still he led the nation. But deep inside, he was broken too. Lincoln knew the pain of loss. Just 2 years earlier, his own son Willie had died in the White House. Willie was only 11, a sweet boy with a bright smile. Lincoln loved him deeply. When Willie died, the president cried like any father would. He stayed in his room for days. He didn't eat. He didn't speak. Some said they heard him whisper, "Why not me instead?" That grief never left him. He hid it behind his work, but it lived in his heart. So when the governor's letter came, Lincoln felt something heavy. He opened it slowly. He read the words. He paused, then read it again. A mother had lost 5 sons. Not 1, not 2, but 5. He placed the letter down. He looked out the window. The sky outside was cold and gray. His mind went quiet. No speech, no orders, just silence. He stood up and walked across the room. He looked at a small painting of his family. He touched it gently. Then he returned to his desk. He lit a new candle, picked up his pen, and began to write. He knew this letter would not bring back the dead. He knew it would not erase the pain. But he believed words could still bring light into darkness. He believed that even in war, humanity must speak. So he began slowly with simple words. "Dear Madam," he thought carefully about each sentence. He wanted to honor the sons. He wanted to comfort the mother. He wanted to speak not like a president, but like a man who understood. He remembered how it felt to lose a child. He remembered that empty space in his heart. That same emptiness now lived in Lydia Bixby. He wrote with a heavy heart. But his words were full of care. Every line was gentle. Every phrase was honest. He did not use big or fancy words. He used words full of feeling. Words like sacrifice, grief, honor. He did not talk about politics. He did not mention battles. He only spoke of a mother's loss and a nation's gratitude. When he finished the letter, he read it aloud to himself. His voice was soft. His hands were still. He folded the paper, placed it in an envelope, and sat back in his chair. The candle burned low. The room was silent again. But something had changed. In that small act, in that quiet letter, Lincoln had done something powerful. He had reached across distance, across pain, across death. He had spoken to a mother's heart, and through her to the heart of a nation. The letter was ready. Soon it would be delivered, but its true journey had already begun. Because some words do not end on paper. Some words live forever. Part 3. The letter that changed everything. The envelope was sealed. The ink was dry, but the words inside were alive, full of pain, full of honor, full of quiet strength. This was not just a message. It was a gift. A gift from a president to a mother. A gift from one broken heart to another. Lincoln's letter was sent to Mrs. Lydia Bixby through official hands. But today, we open that letter together. We read it not just as students of English, but as students of life. Listen closely. These are the words that Abraham Lincoln wrote. Dear Madam, I have been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Yours very sincerely and respectfully, a Lincoln. Those 139 words became one of the most powerful letters in American history. Not because of the length, not because of fancy language, but because of the feeling, because of the truth, because of the heart behind them. Now let's slow down and look at the letter together. This is not just for English practice. This is for soul practice. I have been shown. He begins with respect. He does not pretend to know her pain. He admits that someone else told him about her loss. But even this shows his care. He paid attention. He listened. You are the mother of 5 sons. In one sentence, he honors her identity. Not just a woman. Not just a widow. A mother. A mother who gave everything, who have died gloriously on the field of battle. He adds one powerful word, gloriously. This word brings light into darkness. It tells her their deaths had meaning, that they did not die in vain. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine. This is humility. The most powerful man in the country admits that his words are not enough. He knows he cannot fix her pain, but he still tries. He still reaches out. But I cannot refrain. He says he cannot hold back. He must say something. He must offer his comfort, even if it is small, even if it is imperfect. Thanks of the Republic they died to save. These words connect her loss to something bigger, to the country, to freedom. Her sons are not forgotten. They are remembered by a nation. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish. He turns to faith. The word assuage means to ease, to soften, and anguish means deep pain. He hopes God will soften her pain. He does not promise, but he prays, leave you only the cherished memory. Cherished means deeply loved. He hopes she can remember her sons with love, not just with tears and the solemn pride. These 2 words together are strong. Solemn means serious. Pride means honor. She has the right to be proud, not in joy but in dignity, to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. This is perhaps the most famous line. A sacrifice so costly. 5 sons, laid not for gold, not for power, but for freedom. The image is poetic, a sacred offering, a mother's deepest pain turned into a nation's highest value. Yours very sincerely and respectfully. Lincoln, he signs not just as president, but as a man with deep respect. Can you feel the weight of those words? Can you hear the silence between the lines? This is not just a lesson in English. This is a lesson in empathy, in compassion, in leadership. Let's repeat some of the key words for English learning. Bereavement. Deep loss when someone dies. Assuage. To ease, to make less painful. Anguish. Strong emotional pain. Solemn. Serious. Respectful. Cherished. Deeply loved and remembered. Sacrifice. Giving something valuable for a greater good. Freedom. The state of being free, not controlled. Say them slowly. Feel them. Use them. These words live inside the letter, and now they live inside you. Abraham Lincoln did not use many words, but he chose them carefully. He knew that language is not just for speaking, it is for healing, for honoring, for remembering. The letter was sent, the message was clear, and from that moment on, the world would never forget the name Lydia Bixby, or the quiet, powerful letter that touched her heart and echoed through history. Part 4. A letter delivered, a nation moved. It was a cold morning in Boston. The streets were quiet. The sky was gray. A knock came at the door of a small home. Inside, Lydia Bixby opened the door slowly. A man in uniform stood outside. He held a white envelope in his hand. From the president, he said. She took it with shaking fingers. She closed the door gently, and then she sat down at her kitchen table. She looked at the envelope. Her name was written in careful handwriting. She held it for a moment, just held it, as if she could already feel what was inside. Then, slowly, she opened it. She unfolded the letter. Her eyes moved across the page. No one knows exactly what she felt at that moment. Some say she cried. Others say she simply stared at the paper in silence. Some believe she read it many times that day, again and again, reading it slowly, whispering the words to herself, a mother holding the last thing the world had to say to her. But one thing is certain. That letter did not stay in her hands alone. The governor who first contacted Lincoln shared the story. Soon others began to hear about it. The newspapers printed it. Editors wrote, "Read this letter. Remember this mother. Remember her sons." People all across the Union read Lincoln's words. Soldiers copied it by hand and kept it in their pockets. Teachers read it to students. Ministers read it in churches. It was more than a letter now. It was a symbol of honor, of grief, of sacrifice. Young soldiers, before going to battle, whispered parts of it to each other. They said, "We fight for her, for mothers like her." The words gave strength. The words gave meaning. They reminded people that every life lost was not just a number. It was a face, a family, a story. And what about Mrs. Bixby? She never spoke much about the letter. She never gave interviews. She never asked for attention. Some say she kept the letter. Others say she threw it away. Some stories claim she didn't agree with the war, that she was angry with the government. We may never know the full truth, but this much we do know: 5 sons were lost. A letter was sent, and the world listened. Years later, historians searched for the original letter, but they couldn't find it. The original paper is gone, lost to time, but the words remain. Printed in books, carved into stone, spoken at memorials, read in classrooms. They are not forgotten. They live on, and that is the magic of words. The paper can be lost. The ink can fade, but the message stays in the hearts of those who hear it, in the minds of those who remember it. 1 letter, 1 page, 139 words, and yet it moved a nation. Abraham Lincoln never met Lydia Bixby. He never shook her hand. He never stood at her door. But his words reached her, and through her they reached all of us. In a time of war, he gave peace. In a time of pain, he gave comfort. In a time of loss, he gave meaning. And that is what true leadership looks like. Not just power, not just decisions, but empathy. The ability to feel, the courage to care, and the heart to speak with kindness when the world is broken. That letter may have been written for one woman, but in truth, it was written for every mother, every soldier, every family touched by war, and even today, more than 150 years later, we still hear its voice. Quiet, gentle, eternal. Part 5. The Legacy of Words. The war ended. The guns fell silent. The soldiers returned home. Those who were still alive. America was no longer the same. Cities had been destroyed. Families had been shattered. The country had survived, but the scars remained. And so did the memory of those who had given everything. Among all the speeches and monuments, one simple letter continued to live on: the Bixby letter. A single page written by a president meant for one mother had now become part of a nation's soul. People framed it, recited it, studied it. It was read at military funerals, printed in textbooks, and remembered by future presidents, not for its size, but for its heart. But with time came questions. Some historians began to wonder, did all 5 of Mrs. Bixby's sons really die in battle? Was it 4, or maybe only 2? Records were unclear. Some reports said one of her sons deserted. One may have been captured. Some may have survived. There were even whispers that Mrs. Bixby didn't support the Union cause, that she was angry, not proud. But does that change the meaning of the letter? No, because the letter was never just about facts. It was about feeling. It was about what Lincoln believed in that moment. It was about honoring the idea of sacrifice, about seeing a grieving mother and offering her the only thing he could: words. And those words even today still hold power. They teach us that language is not just for speaking. It is for healing, for remembering, for lifting others when they can no longer stand. Lincoln's letter shows us that even in the darkest times, kindness matters. Respect matters. Human dignity matters. It also teaches us something about English. You don't need long sentences to say something powerful. You don't need big words to move people's hearts. Simple words spoken with truth can last forever. This is an important lesson for every English learner. Don't worry if your English is not perfect. Speak with feeling. Speak with care. That's what people remember. So what is the legacy of the Bixby letter? It is the lesson that great leadership is not just found in laws and speeches, but in compassion. It is the reminder that behind every number in a war is a human life, a family, a story. And it is a shining example of how one letter, just one, can touch millions. Abraham Lincoln wrote it over 150 years ago. But we still read it. We still feel it. Because the words were not only written for Mrs. Bixby, they were written for all of us, and that is the true legacy of words. They don't disappear. They stay. They echo. They teach. And sometimes they heal. Conclusion: your English, your story. My dear learners, you have just heard one of the most touching stories in American history. It was not about a battle. It was not about a victory. It was about one letter. One mother, one voice that spoke softly but forever. Abraham Lincoln did not try to erase pain. He did not offer empty promises. He offered something more powerful. He offered understanding. He offered respect. And he offered words that still move hearts more than a century later. This story is not just about history. It is about you. It is about all of us who are trying to grow, to learn to speak with courage. Many of you are learning English because you want to change your life. Some of you may feel shy. Some may feel slow. Some may feel unsure. But let me tell you something. You do not need perfect grammar to touch someone's heart. You do not need long sentences to show your soul. You just need honesty. You need patience, and you need to keep going one word at a time. Abraham Lincoln was not known for how many words he said. He was known for how deeply his words mattered. You can do the same. Whether you are writing in a notebook or speaking to a friend, remember this. Every word has value. Every sentence is a step forward. Every mistake is part of your journey. So learn English. Use English. Speak English with feeling. Because your voice matters. Your story matters. And one day, your words may be the ones that comfort someone else. Now, I want to ask you something. Has there ever been a moment when someone's words gave you hope? Have you ever received a message that helped you heal? Share it in the comments, because your story may be the light someone else needs today. Thank you for learning with me, my amazing friends. This is Learn English with Stories 365. And I can't wait to see you in the next story. Keep learning, keep believing, and never give up.